And now we resume what we started. May I invite the Water Resource Management Authority to also make their presentation. Water Resource.
Good afternoon, fellow engineers. I hope I'll keep you awake after the heavy meal. My name is Engineer Kenneth Nyundu, the Director General for the Water Resources Management Authority. My discussion with you today is centered on the changing world from the perspective of water resource. I know some of you I'll be preaching today converted, but I think most of us engineers were in other branches of engineering. I'm sure you'll find this presentation worthwhile. So my presentation takes that form. Basically, before you leave this forum, I would like you to change the perception about Warma, which is the Water Resources Management Authority, and become an ambassador of our institution. Then, of course, also to share with you how our water resources are governed, or what instruments govern the water resources at national level and international level. Then we'll look at the water resources situation in brief, and then what is changing, or how the world is changing from the water resource perspective, and then how, as engineers, we should adapt to this change. So, Warma, as commonly known, I think we are a statutory body, as you are aware, established by the Water Resources Management Act of number 21 of 2011. I think that's when the authority was established. We are responsible for the management, the development, conservation, protection, and preservation of water resources in the country. And when we talk about water resources, we are not talking about the water you receive from the tap or in the bottles. I can see a lot of bottles here. We're talking about raw water as it occurs in rivers, lakes, the ground itself. We, as a regulator, we are also a resource manager. So we have two roles, and I know that most of my fellow engineers, they know Water Resource Management Authority, Warma, as just an institution which collects tax for boreholes. So today, you appreciate that actually boreholes which were introduced in 2018, this institution started existing in 2011. So we are not meant for collecting that tax. So I'll share with you what we do. We regulate the utilization of water resources, whether for processing, for agriculture, for hydropower. I'm happy to see that some of your major sponsors are our clients. ZESCO is here, is our client. Which other major sponsor you saw here in front? Yeah, most of these are our clients. So we license these people, give them permits for them to use that water to generate power, to use water to supply to your homes, those who are in agriculture, the industry. The mines, we license them for dewatering. They actually pump a lot of water. They disturb our groundwater, so we license them for that. We also regulate the quality of the water resource in rivers. And of course, we regulate the design and the construction of hydraulic infrastructure. That is the dams, weirs. You cannot build a dam or weir in Zambia without your design drawings being approved by our institution. We are actually looking for seasoned engineers to join us. Those who want to change the environment, please see me before I go. We can strike a deal. We also are involved in planning. Now we are planning, the water resource planning for the entire country. That's our responsibility. So before you plan, you have to measure what you have. So we do assess the resource from the quantity and quality point of view. And then we collect data. We have, I think, a number of stations, telemetric stations, where we collect data in terms of flows and discharge, so that we can plan properly how we allocate this water, because the issue is that we should have equitable access to this water for various uses. So you need to understand what you have and in what state it is. Further, we identify potential water sources, fresh water sources for that matter. So we have a role to play when these new towns are being set up, industries being set up. We identify areas which can give you adequate groundwater if you depend on groundwater, or other areas where you want to, depending on the venture regarding the abstraction from surface water. I've already talked about, this is loaded, conserve, preserve, protect the water resources. We talk of dam bores, wetlands, headwaters or catchment areas. All that is our responsibility. I've already talked about this. Issue permits for utilization. So you cannot abstract water for any commercial use without having a permit from us. Domestic, we are free. Bore drilling, all the companies which are now involved in drilling of boreholes, we license them. I would also like to share with you that if you have any complaint against any driller, please don't hesitate to complain officially to our institution, and we'll preside over such a dispute. Either we make the driller do the bore for another bore for you, or make him fund, or maybe tell you that no, it's you is wrong. So we don't take sides. So already you can see, this doesn't talk about bore tax. So it's something else. I put in these photos just to appreciate as engineers that the data I was talking about, which we collect, we have about 167 monitoring stations dotted around the country. These are telemetric stations along our water bodies, and the 57 groundwater observation wells. We collect hydrological data. And for my colleagues who are involved in some of this infrastructure, like hydropower design of these plants, you cannot do that without using that data. The famous bridge, Kazungura, any bridge, you cannot do that without using this data. Any irrigation scheme, and some of the other industrial works. So do not go anywhere. We have data ranging from pre-independence, hydrological data, sitting with us. And I think you'll see as I go on why it's important for us to use reliable, accurate data from a legitimate institution. Talking about data, engineers, fellow engineers, I think in certain instances we've seen that we tend to excessively precautionary design, over-design, making our designs of some of this infrastructure economically unviable and environmentally unsustainable. And, these designs are basically rigid and not very flexible, Why? Because sometimes as consultants, as engineers, we're just lazy to use real-time data or data which is historical but reliable and accurate. We like extrapolating too much. Yes, extrapolation is okay, but where there's no data. So I'm urging you to come through and get this information or data before you embark on any design of these structures to avoid this. Also, we've seen that when it comes to engineering, especially for water supply and sanitation, my fellow engineers, whenever we are called upon that we don't have adequate water supply in any given community, the first thing which comes in our mind is to expand the infrastructure of water supply. Let's expand the water treatment plant. Let's expand the conveyor pipeline. That kind of thinking, I think we need to relook at it. we need to manage the demand instead. Before we talk about expansion, let's look at the demand. I'll give you an example. Most of the public institutions, and I hope there's no one from UTH here, they always complain shortage of water. But from the books, enough water is being supplied at the institution, but they don't have adequate water. When you move in, you'll find there's a lot of leakages. So no matter how much you pump in, you will not solve the problem. This is the same happening with most of these public institutions, camps, public institutions, even some homes. So we need to change the mindset in terms of this resource. And you know, you appreciate later why I'm talking about this, because this resource is very limited, you know. I'll move a little bit to water governance. What governs our water resources in the country? I think you should know that whatever we do is actually guided by the Water Resource Management Act number 21 of 2011, which actually establishes the authority itself. We also have some statutory instruments which now specifies specifics in terms of fees and charges which we charge for abstraction or when we are permitting you. Then the licensing and of drillers and other construction waterworks also is stipulated there. And then also regulation of borehole drilling. I think we have now specifications. When someone is drilling a borehole, there are specifications which that driller has to observe, failure to which they are actually sanctioned. We have guidelines, standard guidelines. I think for a long time, we were using World Health Organization drinking water guidelines, which is like what you have in your bottles, to measure our water in the rivers. Now, I think it didn't make sense. Because you see, this is drinking water. You don't need this kind of quality for water which is flowing in the rivers. But I think I'm glad to mention to you that as a country, Warma working with the ZABS, which is Zambia Bureau of Standards, ZEMA, NWASCO, and other stakeholders, we have now developed ambient water quality standards, Zambian standards. These are now the standards which govern raw water which is flowing. So when there's pollution, we measure that against these standards. It's quite a big achievement. Then from the policy point of view, we have, of course, the National Water Policy at the apex. But then also it's important to understand from the international point of view, where do we draw our mandate as a country? We are part of the global village, and we are party to some of these things which bind us. So you have to understand the environment in which you are operating. The UN Water Convention talks about protection and sustainable utilization of transboundary waters. Water resource or rivers which are shared, water bodies shared with other countries, those are transboundary water bodies. It is of interest to understand that the entire Zambia is classified as a transboundary water resource, and the issue is that we fall within the Zambezi Basin and the Congo Basin. And because we have subscribed to this, there are statutes there which we have to observe. I will not go much into that. Then we have the SADC revised protocol, Shared Water Course Protocol of 2000. This is under SADC. Again, there are quite 9 principles, but I highlighted a few which is of interest to us to understand that we are there's issues of principle of equity, no priority of use, duty to cooperate, duty not to cause harm, duty to protect. Remember, as a country, we are upstream. When I talk of Zambezi, we house where Zambezi starts from. We are party to this. So, we are not supposed to do anything which harms the water, which will harm downstream countries. We are not supposed to cause any harm. We are supposed to protect. And this is the more reason why the nation created Warma. But again, remember, it comes at a cost. And this is something I want you to think about. As a country, we are spending heavily to protect these water resources because of these principles. while largely our friends are just using the water. So instead of investing in dams only, we have also a duty to monitor, assess, plan, ensure that there's no pollution. Then our downstream guys are just investing in infrastructure. So you can think about that, whether there is really equity in that. We have also ZAMCOM, which we are party to. This is just specifically for Zambezi. Again, it borrows those principles. Then we have the Zambezi-Zimbabwe bilateral. But just to mention also that there's talk between Zambia and DR. I think the formulation of Wapula River Authority. I will not go much into that. Let's talk about the situation. Much of our country is unmapped. Maybe let me say it's not mapped from the water resource point of view. We don't even understand precisely where the groundwater occurrence is. We just drill. It's probability. But as an institution, we actually have embarked on this, which is good news. Also, we are not worried about water ecologically sensitive areas. And you see, these places are supposed to be protected. We have embarked on that to ensure that we declare some of these areas water resource protected areas. It will forbid certain activities to happen. This is very important to safeguard our water resources, unlike what is happening now. There is rampant encroachment. I think I want to appeal again to my fellow engineers who are involved in town planning. Let's cooperate, let's work together. This is where the source of the problem is. I think this issue will see the effects which is having very soon. Standard of living, paving, very good, even where we're coming from, we've paved. Fellow engineers, this is having a toll again on water resources. The rampant paving of our areas are denying the natural infiltration of water to replenish groundwater. This issue of insecurity, making wall fences without making provision for water to flow has disturbed natural drainage. So even as you pave, try as much as possible to leave greenery, to allow water to infiltrate, because we need that recharge. This is why 10 years ago, in certain areas, you would drill a bore, it would just be 60 meters. Now we are going as far as 150, because literal recharge is taking place. Most of our bores will be rendered useless in 5 years to come, if we continue on this trajectory, you know. Then, of course, we know that there's no water in the south part of the country. There's too much water in the north. It's a challenge to us engineers. I think engineering solutions are there. But let's push for this. This has been done in other countries. Let's have interbasin transfer. Let's transfer this water from the north to south using canals, pipes where we need to pump, take advantage of the natural rivers or gravity. Let's have this water flow to the south. We should not be crying about drought anymore, you know? So as engineers, please, let's put that on the table. Then we should also know as a country that we have inadequate storage for water. And I think this is very, very evident. Last year, season, we had a lot of rains. This year we are crying about a drought because we've just kept a little. We don't have dams. As a nation, it's very, very different from when you look at the map of Zimbabwe. It's dotted all over. They harvest every drop. We are far behind in that area. And I think this is an area where, again, we need to do a job and, I think, contribute as engineers. These are statistics. I will not talk much about it. I think our potential water resources is 237 million cubes. Groundwater, you can see it's 157. But there's a figure there, the table. Now, I'll draw your attention to the last there, because I'll talk about this. If you check, water availability, we have 63,000 million cubic meters. Congo has 1,200,000 million cubic meters. South Africa has 23 million cubic meters. But the gross domestic per capita, you can see there. I'll talk to this as I go on. Utilization of water in terms of demand, national demand, you can see what most of our water, 81% is agriculture, followed by hydropower, which is 16.1. Then 3.1 is domestic, and that other one is industry. So that's how our utilization is as it is now. Look at this graph. Quickly, you'll see this is available water resource per capita. 1962, we're talking of over 30,000 cubic meters per year. As of 2018, we're talking about less than 10,000. This graph will continue. And the issue of thinking we have abundant water resources is gone because our population is increasing. There is deforestation. So we need to ensure that we stabilize this graph. Otherwise, we're in serious problems. Let's talk about changing world from a water resource perspective. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, what are the drivers? I think most of this has been discussed. Basically, climate change and the land use change, which is basically human-induced, is having a toll on our water resources. I will not talk much about, about siltation, about these things. Standard of living, of course, it has gone up, and I think I hinted how this is also affecting us, lifestyle. The growing imbalance of fresh water supply, consumption, and population, which I think I've talked about. Growing national demand. The demand is going up. We need to embrace technology and economic advancements to ensure that we find solutions to this. Hydropolitics in SADC. This is my favorite. This is hydropolitics. Water politics. I'm not talking about politics, Fellow engineers, we are Zambians. Let's not take for granted our resources. I mean natural resources, and I mean water resources. The resource we have here is being eyed by our colleagues in the surrounding region. And they have been planning for years to ensure that they get it. So we need to look at this seriously. Let's change our mindset and ensure that we curtail issues of getting water from us, push it further south to other countries. I think that's not good enough. But those plans are there. They will come in any form. Some of you will be involved in some of these projects, but be mindful that this is harmful to our country. Some of these colleagues of ours, of course, they will have influence on us because of their economic muscle and things like that, as I can see. They also use diplomacy anyway. But we need to adapt. This is the last part of my presentation. I wish to appeal to my colleagues who are involved in this sector that let's manage demand rather than supply for now, because there's too much losses which are going at a very great cost, especially in public institutions. Let's refocus at this. Research and technology, let's embrace it. But more importantly, let's be forward-looking. Forward-looking. We should not base our decisions on what is good for us. I think we should be thinking about our future generation. I can assure you that water resource is proportionate to how much you can go in terms of developing the country. I think if you go to Google anywhere, it will show that any highly developed country, even their water usage is high. And our colleagues have already realized, well, they don't have much, so it is stifling their further economic growth. Let's strengthen our institutions. Support us. And I said you need to be our ambassadors. This institution is a public institution. Let's work together. Let's ensure that we generate interest. That's why I was calling for engineers to join us so that we can do a good job. Further adaptation measures. I think we need as a country to up our game. We need to form a water intelligence unit. People will be wondering, of everything, why talk about what? In other countries, these resources are being managed by the military. Not far, if you go to US, water resources is not managed by civilians, military. Very, very strategic. It's not a secret. Most of the wars in the Middle East are centered on controlling areas where there's potential of water, basically. So we need to ensure that we swat what is happening with our colleagues in the neighborhood. Otherwise, we will be caught napping. We should demand as a country, and I mean we should demand equity. I think I hinted on this when it comes to management of water resources. As an upstream country, we are spending quite huge sums of money, this is taxpayers' money, in managing and protecting the resource, while other colleagues of ours downstream are just using this water which is in a good state. I think they need to invest as well. I think there is need everyone to invest, because we cannot be, these monies we are spending, it can be channeled to education and other sectors. So we need, this is another area where we need to start thinking. Otherwise, there's no equity here. And instead of people talking about getting our water and pushing it further south, let's talk about virtual water. Virtual water basically is let's grow food here, export food. They don't need to get our water and grow food there. We will grow food here, export it to them. So that is virtual water. And then share the benefits. So these are some of the things I think, fellow engineers, I thought I should actually share with you, just to bring awareness on water resources and ensure that you appreciate what role this resource is playing in our economy. Thank you very much.